Hello, good evening. Welcome to North West Tonight. This evening we are live in Lancaster for a special programme to mark Brexit Day. I'm Roger Johnson.
And I'm Annabelle Tiffin. We'll be finding out if there is sadness or celebration on the day we finally leave the EU.
And I've been talking to teenagers, finding out how the next generation feels, facing a future outside of the EU in which they had no say.
We're live from a party in Warrington where they're celebrating our departure from the EU.
Children from Blackburn, France and Germany sang together when we joined the EEC. How are they feeling now we're leaving the EU?
The total number of votes cast in favour of leave was 17,410,742.
Well, that was the moment back in 2016 when the result of the Brexit referendum, the EU referendum, was announced in Manchester Town Hall. Since then, almost 4 years of political manoeuvring, of delay and of bitter argument. But you may have heard the clock chime 6:30 a couple of moments ago, and that means that we are now just 4.5 hours from officially leaving the European Union.
So, to mark this moment in history, we are in the historic Dalton Square in Lancaster. Now, the referendum result in 2016 closely mirrored the result here in Lancaster and Morecambe. Of course, the national result, 52% to leave, 48% to stay. So on the day that they removed the British star from the EU flag, what are the people here thinking? Are they celebrating or mourning our exit? Is today a celebration or a wake for you?
Celebration.
Yeah, why is that?
It's about time, isn't it, really?
That's made my day. It took too long.
Did it?
We should never have gone in it.
Put the ties, we're England, we can look after ourselves, and that's all it's served for me.
I think we'll do very well in the world, trade and everything. Yeah, I'm optimistic.
I just think it's a really good day. I think great things are going to come from it.
I think we should wait and see what happens now.
Not particularly the way I would have wanted it, but it's happening and I think we just need to soldier on and get on with it.
I think we should all be coming together nowadays and not being apart. I lived in Spain for 35 years, came back 3 years ago. Yeah, it's sad.
Will we need visas to go into different countries? Will we be welcome in different countries? I don't think so, they're saying.
Being out of the EU, I think we do quite well. We are the United Kingdom, one of the biggest economies in the world, and I think we'll do absolutely fine.
It's slightly worrying, I think, but we've done it, and I suppose that's it now. We're not going to backtrack.
The views of some of the people, unsurprisingly, still divided opinions.
Completely still divided, yes.
I'm going to be hearing from industry in this part of the world in just a moment, but there is, of course, one other big story in this part of the world today, and that is in the Wirral, where people who have been flown in from the coronavirus hotspot in Wuhan are going to be quarantined.
Yeah, Andy Gill has been following today's events. He's at Arrow Park Hospital for us now. Andy Gill, what is the latest there?
Well, Annabelle, we expect those coaches coming up from Oxford to be here in about an hour. It's a Friday night, that might delay them. Then again, they have got a police escort, which will speed things up. We're hearing from some quarters trade unions, for example, that some people have cancelled their appointments here at Arrow Park, even though the hospital say you shouldn't do that because the hospital, the main hospital, is working normally. For the 83 people coming from Wuhan, though, despite the creature comforts they'll be getting here at these accommodation blocks, the TVs, the video and the computer games, these next 2 weeks are likely to be anything but normal. There's been a high level of activity throughout the day at Arrow Park Hospital. Fire officers, police and others making sure the 2 accommodation blocks next to the main building were ready for their new inhabitants. Kettles and other household machines brought in. The chief medical officer explained how the evacuees would be housed.
It is in no sense a feeling of a punitive situation. That's absolutely not the intention. What we wish to do is to make sure that they're in one place near very good infectious disease and other medical services in the event they need it.
The British citizens from Wuhan landed at a military base in Oxfordshire. Coaches then brought them to Merseyside. The local MP here said 4 of 5 hospitals were considered for the quarantine role, but Arrow Park fitted the bill.
Accommodation blocks are separate to the hospital rather than part of the same building, and also because it's not in a city centre or a town centre, that seemed to be important, and of course because there's a lot of expertise in this area. So we've got the Royal Liverpool Hospital, which is an area of real expertise, and also the School of Tropical Medicine in Liverpool as well.
Bosses here say no one who works in the main hospital will also work with the evacuees, but some residents are concerned.
I brought my daughter here for physio this morning, but
now we're with our,
and now we're with my dad.
Dad
so I was thinking, are they here now? So yeah, I am a little bit concerned. Why the Wirral? But you know, it's one of them, isn't it? They've got to go somewhere.
The trade union Unite says it'll be monitoring the situation over the next few days, and the welfare of NHS staff remains its key concern. The union was unhappy that some medical staff who had been living in the accommodation blocks had to leave at short notice. They're now being put up in hotels at the NHS's expense. This afternoon, workers erected screens at the entrance to the accommodation block. The health minister says there's been a positive response from the public.
People have been ringing the council and saying, can we offer to bring magazines in? How can we help? And actually, it's that collective loveliness of this part of the world and British people in general that really makes you proud, because people are definitely thinking of how they can help in the first place, whilst we all must be mindful of taking the correct medical advice for keeping everybody safe.
Arrow Park is operating normally, and patients are being asked to keep their appointments. Well, the flats behind me here are, the accommodation blocks are comprised of self-contained flats. What we don't know is if the people coming in will be able to mingle with each other. Just a word on the people who had to move out, the medical staff who had been staying here, some for a couple of years or more, some families. Some of them are really not happy about the very short notice they had to get out. I spoke to one lady today, a visitor, who says she saw people bundling belongings into their car late last night. The trade unions are not happy either about that. The hospital bosses told the unions that until they had the official word that Wirral was going to be the destination for the Wuhan people, then they couldn't say anything either. Those coaches due here in the next hour or so. Now back to Lancaster.
Andy, thanks very much, and of course we'll bring you any updates on that story in our bulletin at 10:30. Let's go back to Brexit now, and in Lancaster and across communities across the northwest. One of the big questions is, when we leave the EU, will we be richer or poorer?
Yes, some people say that separating ourselves from our biggest trading partner could leave us somewhat worse off. Others, of course, think it could be a big opportunity to free ourselves from the European Union. Well, what about the people who have to deal in hard facts rather than opinions? I've been hearing from some businesses in Morecambe and Lancaster today. The sweeping sands of Morecambe Bay make this town unique, and they were also the inspiration for a drinks wholesale business set up here in the 1980s.
This is our brewery, Crossbay Brewery. We've been brewing Zenith today.
And if you wanted a drink tonight, either to celebrate or drown your sorrows, Morecambe Bay Wines could supply it. They started their own brewery in 2012, and the one thing they will raise a glass to tonight is certainty.
We all know which way it's going now, whereas before there was a lot of arguing and nobody really would make a decision. But now there is some certainty, but there is the massive uncertainty of what's actually going to fall out of that.
So although today is a milestone in many ways for you, the more important milestone is 11 months away.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I would say so, because we're not going to know until that point how it affects us all.
It's only a short stagger from the brew house to F. Edmondson and Son. an international furniture haulage business founded in 1948, which sends its 50-strong fleet across Europe every week of the year. For them, minimising the friction associated with movement and processes is key, and that will remain unknown until next year.
The last thing we want is increase in bureaucracy, increase in administration costs, further paperwork, further delays at borders. An easy example is we go into Switzerland right now and we can be sat at the border for 3 or 4 hours while the paperwork is arranged and cleared. We don't need that for the rest of Europe. That would be significantly detrimental to how we operate.
This area has a significant student population. 14,000 attend Lancaster University. A significant number of them and a third of its academic staff come from overseas. But Lancaster, like other institutions, has expanded abroad, which will help mitigate any restrictions after we finally leave the European Union. It has 7,000 more students at 4 international campuses, including a new one recently opened in Germany.
Lancaster itself is in a position of strength, quite frankly, and we're seeing that a number of students from within the European Union are seeing our German campus as a viable option against study in the UK.
Nothing much will change tonight. The tide will continue to ebb and flow across Morecambe's treacherous bay. But everyone we spoke to hopes the next stage of Brexit doesn't get stuck in the quicksand.
So we have heard lots of differing opinions on what people think and how people think Brexit is going to affect them individually. But what do we actually know? Well, we do know that come 11 o'clock, when the town hall clock strikes 11 o'clock tonight, we will be out of the EU. But what does that actually mean? Well, let's find out now with Dr. Mark Garnett from Lancaster University. So, Mark, what changes are we actually going to see at 11 o'clock tonight?
Well, I don't want to minimise the importance of tonight. It really is a momentous day in Britain's post-war history. However, it's a momentous day when people won't really notice that anything very important has happened unless they happen to be at a party celebrating or a demonstration protesting. So
it's quite a symbolic day, really.
Well, it's more than symbolic. You could say the cliche one would use is that this is definitely the end of the beginning. It's the end of phase 1 of the Brexit process. And obviously there's another 11 months in which there'll have to be further talks and the debate won't go away. But this is certainly an important landmark in this whole process.
So we know that there is now 11 months of this transition period. What actually will be taking place during that time?
Well, I think the main focus will be on talks with the EU to get some kind of trading arrangement sorted out for when we finally do leave this transitional period. But at the same time, Britain will also be negotiating trade deals with other countries and hoping to make significant progress. A lot of attention is focused on the US, but obviously there's a whole world out there, and it will be very interesting to see just how quickly and what kind of progress can be made by, which is really a very onerous task for the British government in the next 11 months.
Do you know, Mark, it's really interesting. Briefly, I was out today, and although the argument has been really heated on both sides over the last 3 years, somehow I think people just feel a bit resigned now.
Well, I think the temperature of the debate has gone down. I think people's minds have not been changed by the general election. The opinion polls still suggest the same kind of spread of opinion. I think that what the job of politicians is very important to try and keep the temperature down. We had so much bitterness in the last 3.5 years. We don't want a recurrence of that. And yet there are possible flashpoints ahead.
All right, Dr. Mark Garnett, thank you very much indeed.
A lot of scrutiny in the 2016 referendum about the way in which different age groups voted. For some young people, of course, their whole adult lives have been dominated by the question of Brexit. So we're going to go to Manchester Town Hall now with our political editor Nina Warhurst. That, of course, the place, as we said earlier, where the referendum result was announced almost 4 years ago. And Nina, you have some of those young people with you.
Yeah, Roger, statistically there will be more broken hearts here in Manchester than anywhere else in the northwest, because 6 out of 10 people here voted for Remain. And you remember at the time some Remainers criticised young people for not being engaged enough in the political discourse. Well, they are engaged now. I've been talking to teenagers and getting their feelings on a future outside of the EU. And I started in Blackpool, where tonight 2/3 of voters will get their Brexit wish. Blackpool has become the totem town for Brexit Britain. People think they know, the disenchanted, the disengaged. But they don't know James, Oxford-bound to read history and French and worried about the Erasmus foreign exchange programme.
We've no idea as of yet, as per the text that got passed into law, whether the government intends on withdrawing from Erasmus completely, and I've got to start sorting out my year abroad, and we've no idea how easy it will be for me to earn a wage in Europe, what fees I will pay to French universities.
Kushi was planning a future working in finance.
But following the Brexit vote, obviously a lot of banks felt uncertainty in operating within the UK because the deal has not been finalised yet. So there are many banks that relocated.
Did they get to vote? No. Are they bitter? Not at all.
It's important for especially the British people about the sense of independence to have more control over our country directly.
And your entire young adult life has been dominated by this one issue. So there's a case for saying it's made you more politically aware and astute because of this issue.
Definitely. I think even though it's a confusing political climate, it's much more interesting. And for people, I want to study history and politics. And I think it makes you want to get engaged and get involved because there's so much going on.
It's 50 miles from Blackpool to the buzzing international city of Manchester, the most Remain voting area in the region. Hamza will leave college soon to study medicine. He cares about the NHS and believes it will benefit from Brexit.
For example, because UK won't be in a single market anymore, it opens the opportunity to get medical equipment for the NHS from America and Australia.
And do you all share Hamza's optimism that it could be quite exciting times ahead in this new global market? You're shaking your head.
We're almost, in a sense, starting again with these countries, so we're going to have to start negotiating with them to make new type of deals. So who's to say that they won't increase import charges or exportation charges?
For some, it's personal. Cami moved here from Romania when she was 14.
Some Romanians sometimes face a lot of discrimination and stuff, and they feel like maybe England saying we want to make it as hard for you as possible to enter the UK. So
how does that make you feel?
Not good.
No?
No.
If you will leave or remain, a Eurosceptic, a Europhile, what's done is done. And those who didn't vote will most keenly feel the impact. And you know, from Barrow to Crewe, from Morecambe to Pendle, it has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege crossing our 5 counties and talking to hundreds of you about Brexit over the past 3 years. What is really interesting is that more than social class, political background, more than income, how you feel about membership of the EU has come to define us all more than any other political issue. It's been tense. At times, it's been toxic, but it has felt like history in the making. And however you are tonight, things have changed forever. You look at Lee, you look at Burnley. Generations of voting behaviour disappeared in a puff of smoke, and perhaps there's no going back.
Nina Warhurst there, getting the opinions of some of the young people who are all tied up in this big Brexit debate.
Yeah, well, for some of those who voted to leave, it's tonight perhaps an opportunity to celebrate. And that is exactly what they are doing at a social club in Warrington.
Yes, Warrington for Brexit have got their dancing shoes on. They've organised an all-British buffet, no less. They've even been practising a sing-along. Let's go live to Naomi Cornwell. She is with them at Woolston. Naomi, over to you.
Yes, Roger, you can see they've got the cake ready for that moment at 11 o'clock tonight when we officially leave the EU. And they are dressed up to the nines and ready to party here in Warrington. Let me show you these outfits. Here they are. This party has been organised by Sharon and Sally.
11 p.m. tonight.
There's been a lot of confusion as to what's actually going to happen, the deals that are going to be done. What does it mean to you tonight?
Well, we're taking back our independence.
Taking back control, yeah, taking back our independence.
We had the referendum in 2016. We had to vote again in the European elections. We've just voted 3 times and we've won with a massive majority, and we're leaving tonight.
And the country's behind it, isn't it?
You sound like you feel like you waited a long time for this.
Of course we waited a long time. And tonight is happening.
Yeah. Certainly a celebration here.
Absolutely.
Everyone's in the mood
well,
for
look
a
at the time.
party.
It's between 6 and 7. At 7 o'clock the doors open and the room is going to be chocker, you know.
So, looking to the future beyond tonight, what difference do you see this making to Warrington?
Well, it's got nothing to do with Warrington. This is about British independence.
It's the country as a whole, isn't it? Brexit is for the country as a whole, for the whole of the country to unite, hopefully, and then, like I say, take back our control and our sovereignty. And they're singing along.
I was going to say there's going to be a sing-along. There's going to be a buffet too, isn't there?
Yes,
Everything on a theme.
Yeah. Well, the evening we've got disco, we've got a live singer at 11 o'clock. What's happening at 11 o'clock,
at 11
Sharon?
o'clock, we've got the
Big
balloons,
Ben
the
being
balloons coming
recorded.
down.
Big Ben being recorded. Everybody's got song sheets. We'll be singing Jerusalem,
Land of Hope and Glory.
And
That's Warrington for Brexit, having their party.
They're obviously having such a good time, aren't they?
Conspiracy theorists might think that somebody's been tinkering with the wires, but we've got technical problems, so we apologise for those. Now, in a programme which has reflected several years of arguments, fallouts and fiercely held opinions, we're going to finish with a note of harmony just before the weather, because back in December 1973, that was at the end of the United Kingdom's first year as a member of the European Economic Community, the EEC, there was a televised celebration in Blackburn.
Yeah, school children took part in a choir concert along with pupils from twin towns in Germany and France to celebrate those new European links. Well, 47 years on, Peter Marshall has managed to track down some of those involved to see how they feel now on the eve of Brexit.
Cast your mind back to Boxing Day 1973.
This is Blackburn in Lancashire. Tonight, the school children of Blackburn are holding a music festival in the big hall in the middle of the town.
Got a dimple, I didn't realise.
Still got it.
Yeah.
Gillian Hornby and Della Sutton were there. Gillian now minus her pigtails. This a rare chance for them to see the archived recording.
Coming up now. There you are. There.
I don't remember wearing that jumper.
Do you not?
No.
Jill had a starring role, a solo performance.
When all the rain about the town is like a looking glass.
Oh,
and all
sweet.
the lights are upside down below me as I pass.
That sounds so posh.
In these intervening years, Blackburn has changed. Our circumstances in Europe have changed. So what are Jill and Della's thoughts on the future?
I think it's been the biggest shambles, I think, but at the end of the day, the majority voted to leave, and I think we need to go with that, and I strongly feel that we need to put the great back in Great Britain.
I don't really think people knew what they were voting to leave from, and I just think you're better off part of the community, stronger together with the rest of the European Union.
Now at last our journey's ended, shivering through the frost and cold.
I'm hopeful for the future. I just think we should have more control over what happens in our country. That was my main reason.
I'm fearful of the unknown.
Sonia Bolton was just 10 when she took part in the concert. She's now 57. This, the first time she's seen the footage in over 40 years.
Yeah,
There you go.
fabulous.
You really haven't changed that much.
Oh, that's really good. Same colour of hair, but I think I've got a bit more grey now, but yeah.
As a youngster, she says she wasn't fully aware of the significance of the country's new European links in 1973.
Anything like that, anything political or anything like that, you don't tend to take much notice of it really, do you? But it was just really nice to have the other countries to come and join us on that day.
Along with over 56% of Blackburn's population, she voted to leave the European Union.
I think a lot of people would like to stand on their own 2 feet. And I think as a country, I think we can.
Sing a song of spring.
She looks back fondly at those early European links, but also looks forward to life outside the European Union.
It was an exciting time when we joined it, but I also think that it's going to be an exciting time coming out. Yeah, see how we do.
Oh, they sound wonderful, don't they? Now, I think one thing we can all agree on in Lancaster this evening is it's blimmin' cold. Let's get a look at the weather now with Mel Coles.
Thanks, Annabelle. Well, yes, it has been cold for some spots, but not all spots. In fact, parts of Liverpool today saw temperatures reach highs of 14 Celsius. Now, bear in mind, the average here at this time of year is around 7 or 8 Celsius. But that mild weather has come at a bit of a cost because we've had quite a lot of cloud around, some mist, hill fog and some rain. And some of that rain was quite heavy. Now, as we head into the weekend, we'll keep the fairly mild conditions for much of the region. It will be windy at times, rain or showers as well. But it's not a washout. There will be some dry intervals too. Now, this evening, we've still got a yellow Met Office warning in force affecting the tops of the Pennines. That's because of the strength of the wind. That's for the first half of the night. It will remain windy across the board. As the night goes on, we'll start to see a few clear spells emerge. The chance of 1 or 2 showers for South Cumbria, but many places remaining dry. And because it's windy, the temperatures aren't going to be dropping much lower than 7 or 8 Celsius. So Saturday morning then, there will be some brightness around. Still the chance of 1 or 2 showers. And then as we go through the afternoon, the cloud will just start to increase. We've got a weather front working its way down from the north. It's fragmenting, so the rain's becoming quite showery by the time it reaches us. It is going to be a windy day and temperatures will be a little down on today's values, but 9 or 10 Celsius still above average for the time of the year. And as we head into Sunday, we've got a brief ridge of high pressure, but it does look as though most places will start the day with some rain and it could be quite wintry, particularly over the Pennines. Back to Lancaster.
Where are we looking? Oh, right.
Just the bridge, yeah. Thank you very much, Mel.
Thank you, Mel. Now, for 47 years, Britain has been part of what is now called the European Union, and the debate over our membership of it has raged on for almost all of that.
As we've will change, opinions will still be divided, but the sun will still come up tomorrow morning. So whether you are commiserating or celebrating tonight, thank you for watching and have a lovely weekend. Good night.
Good night.